Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and welcome to another Friday. And with me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Cringy Voice.
Good morning.
We tried.
Good morning, Timstradamus. I like the intro. Very in season.
Cringe.
And welcome all listeners. Well, since you're apparently in the spirit of Christmas, because I see all your twinkling lights on you, why don't I go ahead and tell you a little bit of an American tradition? The American tradition of leaving cookies and milk for Santa actually took root during the Great Depression. It was a parent's way of encouraging their children to keep a charitable spirit even in the face of financial difficulties.
That's a good little history lesson.
Yes.
Another one is voice lies. This thing's itchy.
You're not supposed to not have an undersweater.
I didn't know that. For new listeners, Voice and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and traumatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
It's not traumatic.
Sometimes they are.
No. And hopefully give you some food for thought.
So, Voice, what have you brewed for me on this cold December morning?
I have crafted for you a delicious tea, I hope. I put hibiscus flowers, orange peel, a cinnamon stick, and cloves.
Oh, wow. That might be one of the most tastiest things I've ever drank.
Does it feel like the holiday spirit?
I don't know what that feels like, but it's good.
Well, I was hoping to put in some holiday flavors in there when it comes to the cloves and the cinnamon, but I still wanted to make it a little fruity tasting, which is why I added the hibiscus and the orange peel.
That's 100 out of 100.
Yes.
It's crazy.
While you go ahead and enjoy your morning brew, why don't we go ahead and delve into these traumatic stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story. Am I the a-hole for renovating my daughter's old childhood room without calling her? I, 38 male, and the other members of my family have chosen to have the holidays, both Christmas and Thanksgiving, over at my house. My daughter has already moved out and said she will stay with friends this year. In order to make the most use of the free space, I decided 3 weeks ago to undergo renovations in my daughter's room and our home office. These renovations meant the destruction of her and the office's connected right internal wall and the mailing of all of her things to her P.O. box. Once finished, I called in my family and had them move into the now renovated bedroom/office for the 3 to 4 week period between Thanksgiving and Christmas to save money. Now, the reason I mention this is because of yesterday's incident. My daughter, having just started to receive her stuff, called me confused as to why I'd done that. I told her about the renovations, why I'd sent over her things, and to expect more of them over the week. There was a brief silence. She usually does this when she is uncomfortable, and she explained how she couldn't take most of the stuff into her dorm on short notice, and that she wished that I had told her the plan before renovating or moving anyone in. I told her that since she moved out, the room was mine to do what I wanted with, and that I couldn't hold any of her stuff as I already shipped it. I've come to regret being as irate as I was, and feel as if I could have involved her more, but I was already on a tight deadline with the renovation and needed to move out as much stuff as possible fast. Am I the a-hole?
So there's some things in this story that don't make any sense. When would you ever put your hands on stuff that isn't yours and not ask or talk to the person it belongs to first?
I know when.
When?
When you're being inconsiderate.
Okay, that'll work. When he starts the story, I thought he was saying that his daughter was renting out a home with people. That I can understand. All right, fine. I still don't understand not getting in contact with her first, but he ships it there to what I think is a home. Okay, there's space. Then he later reveals his daughter moves out, but not really. She's literally at, I guess, university. He's shipping these things to a dorm room, not a home.
Well, that's why it's going to a P.O. box.
I'm shocked. I'm so scared to ask. Does he tell us what he ships her?
He doesn't say what he ships her.
Could you imagine at your dorm, you're actually talking to your roommate and you're about to tell them that, by the way, I think I'm about to have a lot of my belongings in this one little room, depending on what size it is, if it's a 4-bed or a 2-bed, that you're going to have to share a lot more space with your items and now have to figure out as a young adult who's in college how you're going to figure your way around all of the items that just got dropped off at your room.
That would be awkward.
Like, what are you supposed to do at that point? Your father clearly didn't care about any of your items or you because he didn't bother giving you a phone call first just to say, hey, by the way, I'm turning your room inside out and I'm mailing all of your things. You couldn't have at least had a chat with her first? Come on with that. All this comes down to is you're very inconsiderate and it's all about what you want in that moment. And that sucks. You're definitely the a-hole, OP.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. In fact, many commenters stated dorms are not considered a permanent residence. And aside from that, the living space is ridiculously small. And then to put on top of that, our OP actually answered some commenters. And let me just go ahead and put out there what he said.
Oh, joyous wonderment.
One of the things that he said was, why can't I take advantage of an opportunity? While my daughter was there, I had the obligation to provide a consistent and personal environment for her. And now that she's gone, she no longer has any claim to that right. I had both the money and the chance to finally check off one of my goals since moving in while not hurting our relationship. Someone says, it obviously hurt your relationship though. That's why she told you she wished you hadn't done that. Their response was, I don't really see it that way. Hurting our relationship would be her yelling at me about it or something. Now, let me go ahead and provide an update.
I just want to say one other thing though. By him having that way of looking at it, it kind of goes against exactly how he described his daughter, because he said she gets quiet when she gets in uncomfortable situations.
Correct.
So by him saying, oh, she would be mad at me if she yelled at me. No, you clearly understand that when your daughter gets in places she's uncomfortable with, she's not quiet. So you can't have those two things exist in the same sentence.
That's a very smart point out right there. Well, let me go ahead and provide you with an update our OP gave us. They actually put down, so after my family and I finished eating, I called my daughter to see where she currently stands. She's ignored me for a bit, but she just texted me asking if I'd finished sending her things, to which I answered yes, and that she intends to spend Christmas at her same friend's house.
And he thinks it didn't hurt his relationship.
Yeah. In all honesty, he was just getting really defensive with a lot of commenters when they were trying to point out that what he did was pretty callous and sort of self-centered. To go ahead and put it out there, when I truly looked at their relationship, if our OP's child has just left for college, that would make them 18.
Yes.
And our OP is 38. That would mean that our OP was 20 when he had his kid.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they're still, I know that they're 38 right now, but it feels like he might have raised her, but he's got this mentality that he was waiting for her to just leave at the first moment.
Oh, it was a burden. This is what
there
this
you
smacks
go.
of.
That's
100%.
what it is.
But that's a terrible way of looking at it. And she's feeling that right now. And I promise you, you'll be feeling that later.
I definitely agree with that statement. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about a child's name. Am I the a-hole for having an issue with my spouse's stance on our child's last name? I, 30s female, am currently expecting. My husband, 30s male, and I have been together for over a decade. And I chose to keep my maiden name when we got married several years ago. He has always respected this decision. As far as future children go, I always knew our children having his surname was important to him, and I never had an issue with this. So now I am pregnant, and after we found out, I was excited. In my excitement and babbling about the future, I mentioned the idea of a hyphenated name, which I immediately said wouldn't be practical as it would be too much of a mouthful. I reiterated that his last name for the baby was the plan. He balked. disgusted at the idea of hyphenated names, and said kids with hyphenated names get picked on and they're ridiculous. The baby will have my name because that's just the way it is. Again, the baby having his last name I was in support of, but I was taken aback by his comment and asked, "What do you mean, that's the way it is?" He went off, saying how children automatically are given their father's last names at birth, as if it's some sort of automatic legal requirement, like someone comes to the hospital and enforces the father's last name on the birth certificate. Now, I am even more taken aback and questioning, WTF is he talking about? I am not liking this. He escalated further about men who has children without their last names are schmucks, pussies, etc. I am fully stunned at this point. He has no explanation for the statement he made about fathers' names being automatically enforced by nameless, faceless entities on families at hospitals, and switched to saying, "Come on, you know this has always been important to me," which I feel is contradictory to the bizarre claim of legal enforcement. I went from having no issue with giving our child his surname to having an issue with it, as I am upset with what I perceive to be entitlement. And even though I don't want a hyphenated name, I was still upset about him being so disgusted with the idea of my surname being included. This conversation changed the whole tone of this for me. It went from being something I had no problem doing because I knew it was important to him, to being very turned off by his recently discovered beliefs. I have addressed it twice since this originally occurred, telling him it's very off-putting and upsetting for me. He just blows up and demands to know what last name the baby will have. I know I am hormonal and not quite myself lately, so I would like to know other people's take. Am I the a-hole for having such an issue with this? For clarity, I feel like I may be the a-hole because I may be overreacting and or irrational, like I am causing unnecessary issues. Edit. There was never an explicit agreement between my husband and I of what to name hypothetical future children. I know it is something important to him, but it was never an agreement in our relationship prior to or after marriage. This was the first time we ever discussed surnames in any serious capacity. This was the first time hyphenation was ever addressed. He has never stated future children must carry his surname exclusively until this conversation. He obviously knows how important my surname is to me, being as I kept it. We have an older child from a previous relationship. None of us share last names. I also don't believe keeping my maiden name or other children having a different name makes us any less of a family. Am I the a-hole?
Well, in a world full of Grinches, let's see if we can be a Cindy Lou. Probably not. So we'll get into this because I'm certain a lot of people have this conversation with their significant other, because it is important that you guys have a base understanding of what each other wants, especially when you're talking about kids and surnames and all of that. There wasn't even going to be an issue until ROP's husband got aggressive, pushing the pile for some reason, and not only pushing the pile, but then degrading anyone that doesn't fall under what his values are as far as surnames are concerned. It sounds like, though, ROP is finally seeing what her husband's actual values are.
They've been together for a decade.
That's quite a long time not to know someone's like base values. You say that he was okay with you keeping your last name, that he didn't have a fight with that. But that is in contrast to how he's treating everything else. Because what his reaction to this is telling me is he actually cared quite a bit that you don't carry his last name. Now, I can agree with her when it comes to kids and not sharing last names. It doesn't mean that there's any less love. At the end of the day, the OP is not the a-hole in this situation. She's being given pause. It's not she's seeing a whole other side to her husband and his viewpoints.
Well, our consensus on Reddit is that our OP is not the a-hole. In fact, this whole thing sounds really weird, but I also understand it. I've grown up always understanding the expectation that when I have a child, they would always carry his father's last name. It's weirdly almost supposed to be, at least from how I was raised, it's supposed to be almost like a badge of honor for a child to take on the last name of the father.
Yeah, it's traditional values.
And maybe that's it. As I've grown and developed my own sense of person, Timstradamus, I was more than happy to take on your last name because it was by choice. It stopped being that traditional value long time ago when I realized that we can have the freedom to sort of choose our own names. I can even begin to change my actual first name, but I love it too much to actually let it go. Now, when it comes to hyphenated names, I've never heard quite the animosity that our OP's husband tried to put out on it.
Yeah.
I think that's weird. I've actually personally really enjoyed hyphenated names. I see it no different than enjoying a good middle name. I love finding out individuals' middle names. They are sometimes one of the most creative forms where you have a very, and I hate to say it like this, you have a very generic or popular trendy type first name, and then you can see the sort of creativity when it comes to a middle name.
Although middle names are dropping off now. The next generation of people naming their kids are not using middle names anymore.
Oh, that's sad to actually hear about.
That's a huge drop off.
I hope it comes back. In the meantime, I see hyphenated surnames no different than a unique middle name. It's nice to actually see that when I see a hyphenated name, to see that it's two families getting together and you can actually witness that just in a name. If you already know that your spouse is open to your child having your last name, it should have been left at that, and all the negative stuff should have just been thrown out the window.
I think what it really came down to was just domineering her.
That's
making her feel like it was never her choice to begin with. You were always going to do it this way.
And I think that's where all of this stems wrong. Because for me, when I read this story, I was trying to understand, well, how do I feel about last names and how people take on last names? To me, I've never really felt like there's a wrong or right to it. It's always been just feeling what's right to you in that moment.
Yeah, it's a decision that you and your partner need to make together.
Well, I look forward to seeing what listeners think about this one. Let's go on to our next story and see if you can go ahead and meddle out this dispute. Am I the a-hole for telling her it's not her kid? My brother, Adam, and his wife, Eve, live with another woman, Lilith. Lilith is a mess. She's morbidly obese and doesn't work because she's disabled. Supposedly, she moved in with them because she was having some sort of mental health issue living with her parents. She was then in her late 20s and never left. Adam and Eve both dote on her. She comes to every family event. The one time she wasn't invited, they were pissy about it. Every few months, there's a new, oh, poor Lilith thing, and everyone's supposed to be all sympathetic about it. 2 years ago, my sister and sister-in-law, not Eve, were going through baby clothes sister-in-law no longer needed. Lilith started crying, and Adam and Eve escorted her out and went and comforted her for like 2 hours. I was going to confront her then for ruining joyful events for my family that she's apparently decided to join, but my mother insisted we couldn't mention it because Lilith was going through a difficult time. When is she not? Because she'd been told a few weeks before that she was going to have a hysterectomy due to precancer. Now Eve is pregnant, and they've decided that Lilith is going to co-parent as a second mother to the poor kid. Now Lilith claims the baby, who isn't born yet, takes after her. Like, the baby is super squeamy on the ultrasounds and she fidgets all the time. That's it. Literally everything they have because the baby is not born and has no relationship to Lilith at all. Adam and Eve just keep laughing about it. They even play along. I got to see that joke play out twice where Lilith said it and once where Adam did. Oh, the baby takes after Lilith. Haha. They were all at my mother's house, and different people kept coming by to congratulate them on the baby. The fourth time I heard it, I lost it. I said, no, he doesn't take after you. He's not your kid and never will be. Lilith cried again. Eve took her out of the room, and my brother lit into me. Said it's just a joke that makes her feel better about never getting to be pregnant even though she really wanted to be. And he kept on about it. He says she is the kid's mother, even though you know she literally isn't. And that if I can't accept that and treat her like a part of his family and his child's parent, then I won't be welcome to see my nephew ever. I said I didn't think he'd be willing to skip out on every family event over this shit. He said he'd tell our family it was him and Eve with the baby and Lilith, or me, and we'd see who'd be invited. My mother is basically obsessed with her grandchildren ever since Dad died, and my brother has always been the golden firstborn son. She calls Lilith her bonus stepdaughter, which I'm pretty sure is a dig at me because I'm not married. So now I'm basically going to get kicked out of my own family if I don't apologize to Lilith and pretend she's totally my nephew's mother, even though she obviously definitely isn't. Am I the a-hole or is my brother way out of line?
Sweet mother of pickles. The story is very odd because we have Adam and Eve, which is the married couple. Correct. And they've taken in a friend, I guess, of theirs?
Lilith.
Okay. And Lilith in this story is disabled and does not work. But they're all around the same age, correct? In their 30s, 20s?
Correct.
And I guess it's been like this for a minute with no plans for it to change. So I wonder what the real relationship is between Adam and Eve and Lilith, because it doesn't seem as just a friend. And I wonder if, do they fill us in on that at all? The dynamics here? Because it sounds odd. And if it does sound odd, that means you're missing something.
So they don't. However, a lot of commenters are kind of pointing out what you are. This sounds like a polyamorous and or triad relationship.
Yes. But they're unwilling to, I guess, either reveal that or talk about it with the family at all, which is leading our OP to be the way he is towards the situation. Because I'm guessing none of them actually understand what's going on. Or if they are, they're not accepting it.
You're on the same track that most other commenters are on.
Okay. If everyone else in your family is accepting of what's going on and it's not hurting anyone, then I don't see why it should be up to you to pass judgment on them and to be as aggressive as you have been. If you don't like the situation, I think you all are adults, correct?
Correct.
Then you could just walk away from it and not be a part of it. You can be a good family member and tell them best of luck and move on with your life.
But this is the problem we get back into in the comments section. He says, but this is my family. I don't want to leave my family.
Okay, which is interesting because that's a whole different headspace to be in. I think you need to take a step back and realize that life isn't just about you, and life can be lived in many different ways. You didn't have to put yourself in between you and everyone else. Clearly, everyone knows that Lilith could not have a child. Did you really need to point that out to her? Was there a point? Did you win? Because all it did was have your family members say, we're going to make everyone pick between all of us or you. I don't believe that anyone is innocent in this story. But you are definitely the a-hole. You gatekeeping family is interesting.
That's to say the least. So our consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. And then to add to that, many commenters pointed out, aside from our OP being jealous, they say it shows more how you feel about your real brother when you call him the golden child, on how you feel about this relationship, because it seems as if your brother probably had a lot of the limelight when it came to family. And then suddenly Lilith comes, and for our OP, Lilith is a stranger, essentially. And now Lilith is getting all of the limelight. But him, as somebody who's blood related, part of the original family, doesn't get that same treatment. And therefore that jealousy rears its head. Now, The one thing that I will say, if our OP or anybody like OP ever comes across this very small channel, you don't need to like someone. You do need to respect them. There's no reason for you to butt into anybody's relationships and how it decides to operate, whether they're in a poly relationship or not. It's nobody's place. If you still want to be included in family events, you can. And if you can't stand it, just excuse yourself. The only person that's making it difficult is honestly just you for yourself. You can't control anybody else but your own actions. And your own actions stemmed into your brother trying to make an ultimatum. And I absolutely hate when people put out ultimatums for others. That should be showing how petty all sides are being when it comes to this situation.
That's why I said none of them come out of this as being right. I think everyone could have stopped and taken a second to really understand, even if it is the OP in the situation attacking his brother and the way he's living. His brother, being the oldest, probably should have taken a step back and went, hey, why is this coming up now? You still are an onus to help that situation.
I definitely agree with that. Well, let's go ahead and go to our very last story of the day. Am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend I had to put her in her place to realize what she did? When I first started dating my girlfriend, she was very insistent on wanting me to shave my goatee and grow my hair out. She also mentioned she wanted me to change my style a bit. She explicitly said on our second date, if this is going to be something serious, you'll have to shave your goatee because I associate it with douchebag men. I laughed it off at the time and said, that's not going to happen. The goatee came back up in conversation and I told her that it's not cool and that she needs to stop telling me what to do. She initially got defensive and said, what else have I told you to do? Show me. I referred to the style and growing out hair example, and she finally came around and said, you do you, man. I don't want you to change for me. We were arguing today and this situation came back up. I said word for word, it really annoyed me that I had to put you in your place for you to understand your unfair demands of me. She immediately started crying and said it was totally disrespectful to say I put her in her place. Am I the a-hole here?
So this sounds very like a youngish kind of problem we're having here.
I hope so. But who knows? Sometimes you and I have encountered stories on the AITA. We thought they should have been a young person's problem and they were older.
That's very true. I'm going to err on the side of I'm hoping that they're younger, because as you get older, you understand that you take people as they are, not what you want them to be. And this one's kind of, I think everyone sucks for me. And it's because he meets this girl and immediately upon having, I guess, their first or second date, she's already saying, look,
second date,
you got to cut that thing that's growing on your face off. You got to grow out your hair. You got to change all of you on the outside. I just don't like everything about you that's on the outside.
But I still want to date you.
Yes. And then he accepts that. Now, he doesn't accept it in the way of saying yes. What he does is he goes and continues to date her. By you actually continuing this relationship, you're basically saying, without saying it, that you're accepting of these values. It sounds like they're still figuring out how to date and love someone, because you don't start it off by saying, I want to change everything about you. And he has every right to feel hurt and defensive over that. Take them as they are. Grow together. That's different. Having someone pick their styles or grow into some certain things as they come into it, it's very different. But sitting there and telling you have to cut your goatee off or grow out your hair or change the clothes that you wear on a daily, the girlfriend in this situation just has to learn that you can't make people what you want them to be. Now, is that the right way to have learned it and then sat there and told her that I had to put you in your place? Think about that. If you've ever had someone tell you those exact words, put you in your place, did that ever feel good?
No.
So why would that feel good to do to your partner? My biggest piece of advice is, especially when you're younger, watch the words that leave your mouth, because you can't take them back. Because I'm pretty certain most people have been told, if not those specific words, something akin to that. And no one wants to feel like they're under someone's boot. So, yeah, you're the a-hole, but so is your girlfriend. I think both of you need to learn how to communicate with each other.
Well, our consensus on Reddit was that our OP is the a-hole. But a lot of commenters put out there, you're not the a-hole for not wanting to change your appearance. But you are the a-hole for the condescending way that you're trying to talk to your girlfriend. And I have to just say it point blank, yes, you are very disrespectful to your girlfriend. You're supposed to love your partner and respect them. Telling anyone that you're putting them in their place is the exact opposite of that. Nobody enjoys that. And if that's how you treat your partner, you guys clearly aren't properly made for each other. And that's just the start of a toxic relationship, if not already in the middle of one.
Controlling someone is not loving them.
No, whether it's by trying to change their looks, what they're comfortable with, or by trying to put them in their place.
Yep.
You should never, ever think that you'd have to put your partner in their place.
It just sounds like young people having to learn how to function within a healthy relationship. And hopefully they come around to it.
The only thing you should put in its place are your Christmas decorations on the tree.
We still have to do that.
We do. I'm excited.
What was that, our last story?
That was our last story.
Okay. You picked some good ones to leave us out on Friday.
I tried to give us the maple syrup inside of our pancakes.
Delicious. Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you see in the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We would also love to thank all of our patrons for your continued support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of y'all.
Sending you all of my Christmas cheer. Mwah.
Well, listeners, I'll leave you with a question. What made you smile today?
What has me smiling right now is the fact that I'm about to play some Hades.
Oh.
I'm so excited. I made some time for it.
And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet.
And maybe you'll get some Brussels sprouts.
No, I don't want that for dinner.